Welcome to the epic season recap. Fan favorites and fond farewells. How are you all doing on this final episode of season 2? And I'm here with the co-host. Hey, Rene. Hey, Ebony. How y'all doing?
Hey, doing good.
They are here to make it epic. It's not just randomly epic, it's because we're here together to talk about some fan favorites, which are the ones that we got the most views. And then we're going to bid some fond farewells, but we'll tell you what that means at the end. So I am excited to be here on episode number 13 of season 2, which means this is episode number 26 in all. And that's pretty awesome because sometimes when God tells you to do something, you get afraid, you're nervous, you're just like, I'm not sure. And so it actually took me a couple years to do this, like God told me to do, maybe actually almost 3. But now we're 26 episodes in. We are excited about season 3 that will be coming up soon, and we'll give you more details about that. But before we get in, I am Lorraine Edwards, co-founder of A Single Mission, and I am passionate about helping single women embrace their singleness, walk in their purpose, and prepare for the partner they desire. And I have my wonderful friends and co-hosts, Ebony and Rene, with me again for this final episode. We are really looking forward to recapping some of our favorite episodes, some of your favorite episodes, and just adding some thoughts to it. Maybe new thoughts have come up over the time as we've pondered it some more. And maybe some of you didn't get to see it, so now you get to see little clips and enjoy those. But we also want to welcome those who this might be your first episode and you're like, I don't know what they're recapping, but I'm going to check it out. And so there's a whole playlist that we will post there above Renee's head, and you can just binge watch the whole 2 seasons while we are on break. And we'll be excited for you to do that, as well as to like, share, subscribe, comment. And we have a special gift for those who answer in the check-in. What is the check-in? I'm going to look to I'll go ahead and post that. Our check-in for today is, what did you learn in this season that you have or you will apply to your life? And I'm just going to say that if you respond in the comments, I will send you the new ebook that I finished a couple of weeks ago. It's a brief one. It's a mini book, but I've gotten some good feedback, and I will send that to you for free. If you comment what you learned in this season and what you have started to apply or that you will apply. And we are looking forward to seeing your comments. So thank you again for joining us. Now, let us go ahead. You know what? Before we do that, I'm going to ask you, Ebony and Rene, are you ready for this? What have you learned in this season that you have or will apply in your life?
Get it, Rene.
Okay. So one of the main themes that I think was consistent throughout this season was that whole self-awareness thing. And from episode to episode, there were so many practical tips that were given on how to become more self-aware, how to put yourself in a position to better understand your purpose and all of that. So that's something that I feel like I'm taking away. And some of the tips that were offered, we're going to go over when we recap, because some of them that I have in mind come from one of my favorite episodes.
Okay.
But again, just all throughout the episodes, if anybody takes the time to view them, you will see that there are so many suggestions and tips that are offered. And that's what I'm trying to do. I want to be better in touch with who I am, my value, and what I have to offer, And that's something that I'm definitely taking away from this season.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
I would say deepening my relationship with my husband. I was listening to again the conversation that we were having about, I think, the 7 signs, and it actually might be one of the clips that we talked through about the dangers of being bored with your mate. And my husband and I do not have that issue. And because our lives are so busy, it can be easy to miss each other. And then you get into the routine of finding things to do by yourself because your spouse is working or whatever. And so I have committed to and have been more intentional about creating points of connection for us.
That's awesome. And the thing that I like about that, is that we know, and we've said many times, that our, primary target audience is single women. But the reality is that everything that we've talked about is valuable for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can learn from it, even if you are married and maybe you married someone who was the wrong person, like point blank period. People do that all the time. But it doesn't mean you have to stay in a space of just unhappiness and misery. Like, what decisions can you make now to make that the right relationship, to make that a happy and joyful and loving relationship? That is 100% possible. And so the fact that you are here sharing with us as the married one, but also learning and saying, hey, I can do this, and even if you do something well, it doesn't mean you can't do it better.
Sure.
And so I think I'm really happy and grateful for that. And I pray that other people who may not be single are also getting value, or single women are getting value that they can take. I think that for me, doing the thing that's hard, that God asked you to do, and trusting Him to direct that. Now, in a sense, we haven't talked about that directly in any of the episodes, but doing this thing right here is challenging. Obviously, it gets easier in many respects as you hit record and you start talking, but there's a lot that happens behind the scenes, and a lot of planning and a lot of editing and those things that are happening, and just trying to figure out all of these little nuances of YouTube and algorithms and getting people to watch and all of that. And then also just being live. So that means, like, whatever happens and you still do it. And it's funny, like, as when I hit go live on the platform, I don't really feel nervous, but it's usually like maybe an hour before we like get together that I start to feel like, oh no, like that feeling. But I'm just so happy that we hit go live, and we've been doing it now for 26 weeks. And so do the hard thing, like be reflective in the sense of, what is God asking me to do? I'm afraid I'm going to do it anyway. So that was my lesson. So we're just going to play some clips, and then we're going to go back and talk about maybe other points. And so the first one that we're going to talk about is our episode on 7 things you should look for in the one. I think Ebony was just referencing that. And we are going to go yourself short because you just like them.
Yeah.
When you realize, I actually am bored whenever I'm actually with them. Like when I have to spend extended period of time, I'm kind of bored with them. That's a no-go. That is a no-go.
Not only is it a no-go, it is an in for the enemy. It is an in for the enemy. If you are bored with your mate, Satan will use that.
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
That's a period. I didn't even realize. I forgot that was a clip that we were going to talk about. But it's just it is. You have to be intentional about every aspect of your relationship, and that getting to know your partner, there should be excitement about that. There should be joy about that. When my husband and I just celebrated 25 years, and when I know that I'm going to see him, I still get butterflies. I still am anticipating our conversation. I'm still anticipating, when he comes in the house, how he's going to greet me, how we're going to greet each other. And it's that way, not just because we love each other, it's because we like each other. Because there have been times in our relationship where we loved each other and didn't like each other, and we'd be like, do what you do. You know what I'm saying? But we are now in a space where that is not the culture of our relationship. We don't do that anymore. But if you can't have consistent conversation, if you find yourself, you sighing hard or twiddling your thumbs when y'all having a conversation, that is bad. That is bad. And if you really love that person, you're going to do the work that needs to be done to fix it.
No, that's good. That's good. I like that. And I think that, the word that you used that I think is so important is intentional, because I believe that many people see marriage as something that still, despite all of the exposure that we've had to marriages that aren't that great, that it's just like, oh, we love each other. It just happens. And then we're just going to naturally be in the space of just joy and love and peace and commitment and all of those things all the time. And that's just not even close to being true. Like everything has to be intentional. And I think that that's true, not just in marriage, in every relationship. It doesn't happen. Yeah, there's some people that you have more of a natural flow for whatever reason, your similarities, but it still doesn't mean that you don't have to be intentional about nurturing that relationship. It may just be easier to nurture the relationship. And so you don't think about it as work. But the reality is you have to put in the time, you got to put in the reps, you got to put in the effort, you got to put in the thought. You have to be intentional around nurturing the marriage or a relationship, like you're dating someone or whatever. And the problem often is that people nurture it when they're dating and then they stop, when they get married.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes
you just said exactly what I was
stopping. I'm sorry, Honey, go ahead.
That's okay. No, I was saying Lorraine said exactly what I was just thinking. And that's one thing, like Ebony, we were talking about you being married and being a part of this program. I love that you are and that you are married, because it speaks to the soundness of the ministry and the information that's being shared. Right? Because again, we can give all the advice that we want to single people. We don't really know if it works until we're married. You know what I mean? So you give us the inside scoop. Like, yes, this information is good to go into it, but it's also good to continue. It's still useful on the inside of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's exactly what I was about to say about the nurturing piece. Because sometimes the nurturing stops because life happens. And that was the case for, my husband and I, like when he started his own business, when we had the twins, when we had our son, when my career started to move, it was difficult for us to stay connected. When we first got married, all we had, was love and bubbles and unicorns, and so we were like, this is great. And then when we started having responsibilities, and it was like, shoot, like, what we gonna do now? So that nurturing, and sometimes you don't realize that it stopped until one day you wake up and you feel empty, or one day you wake up and you feel disconnected. And so that's another reason why it's super important to communicate up front. If you are planning to be married, then talk about the what ifs, talk about the eventualities, and what you're going to do when life happens.
And how you're going to put guardrails around that, because it's not like when you driving down the road and there's a steep hill, then it's all of a sudden someone's alongside you trying to build a guardrail. It's like, no, the guardrails are up in advance.
Right.
So to protect from that slippery slide down a mountain. And so we need to, and that's kind of what we're trying, that's what we're trying to help you do now, is put up the guardrails now. Prepare now. Live wiser, love wiser, marry wiser. So put those guardrails up now so that you're not sliding off the hill unwittingly. You know what I'm saying? Now somebody may push you off the hill. we don't have a solution for that.
Yeah, that's
but
something
you're
different.
not just sliding down the hill. So Rene, did you have anything else about that? Because we're going to play another clip, actually from part 2 of that episode. So let's go there.
Now, I'm going to actually give you 2 answers. One is my young, immature self, and the other one is the Rene that you are looking at now.
Okay.
What trait in a date would cause you to eliminate someone, right? There was a time long ago where I went on a date. I was hooked up by a friend. I went out with this guy, and I was completely turned off by the fact that he decided to wear a blue and gray sweater vest with no shirt underneath, matching his high top shoes and his extremely long shorts.
Oh.
I questioned all of his life choices. And long story short, I never saw him again. That was when I was young and very superficial. So now I would say something in a date that would cause me not to go out with someone again is if I detect any unkindness. Like say we go out to eat, we go to a restaurant and he's unkind to the waiter or to the host or something like that. It's over. We're not, I don't do that. So yeah, that's mine.
No, that's cool.
Excellent.
That's cool. I agree with, well, I probably agree with the first one too, but at the time, he's probably like a millionaire somewhere, like
right.
Exactly. G'd up. It was a test. So it's like you always got to check. Is it a test or is it not a test? Ebony, do you have an answer to that? I know you've been married a long time, but nevertheless, I'm sure you probably got something.
Yeah, I'm with Rene. If a person is unkind to anyone, and that means that you eventually you're going to be unkind to me, and that's not going to work for me. I think also when I was dating, if the person talked about themselves the entire time that we were together, absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. We would part ways probably before they intended us to.
Even before the end of the date?
Oh yeah, 100%. I rode quick.
Yes.
Yeah. That is a waste of time.
Yeah, I agree with both of those, and also I think that I would add if they were cheap or not generous or give evidence that they were not generous. Of course, in different stages of your life, you may have different resources, obviously, but I also think you shouldn't be really trying to pursue somebody for real, if you can't even afford to take them on a date, and then like tip and be generous in your tipping and all of those types of things as we go. It kind of says something to me about who you are, versus if you don't have a lot of money, you can always have a date that doesn't cost money, but it's still really beautiful and fun. So I don't like people who are not generous and so that to me is a trait that would be like, I can't live with that for the rest of my life.
Generosity is a spirit. It's not just the things. It's a spirit. It's your character.
Yeah. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is like, it's so funny to watch us watch ourselves. And for anyone who's joining us, we are showing clips from the season and just kind of recapping and talking about them. So, and we all had on black on that particular day. So But we're not going to have the same problem we had last time we did the recap, because I wore the shirt every day pretty much. So like you will see the shirt in almost every video. So because I had that blue one that just kept showing up. But so that was from, we also talked about that, but that was the check-in just about things that you find that are kind of, I hate to use the harsh word, but repulsive to you, or like you're like, that repels you as someone that you want to actually spend your life with. But we went on to talk about some other things. Is there anything else that you thought of that would be like, no, I don't really like that? That's something that I would definitely pass on if I was to meet someone who had that character trait.
Me or Rene?
Either one of you.
I still agree with every single thing that we said
Yes.
in that video. In addition to talking too much about themselves, I mean, just somebody who just doesn't talk enough, who doesn't, share any like worldview, who doesn't watch the news, doesn't read books, is,
that's
just not well traveled. They're just not really bringing much to the table in that regard, because I think that leads to what Ebony was talking about. It leads to boredom. You know what I mean? I'm living life. I'm reading. I know what's going on. I have opinions. I want to talk about it, and, and if we don't have anything to talk about, that leads to a very dry relationship.
Yes.
And that's actually what we were talking about in the first part. When we were talking about communication, just that ability to communicate, not just about people. A lot of times people think communication is about, like, I have to share my feelings about some problem that we're having. No, communication, like what we're doing right now, is communication. We're able to talk. We listen to someone, and then we have a thought about what they said, and then we share that thought, and then it just goes back and forth. And I pull from this thing that I read, or this podcast I listened to, or this show that I watched, and you do the same. And now we're sharing information, but knowledge, wisdom, feelings, how, our opinions. It even sheds light on our values. When you are able to communicate it about things like that, it reveals your values. And so you may not sit down and ask someone that you're dating, so what are your values? Though I do think you should ask that question. Someone may not necessarily be able to clearly articulate all of their values, but when they give an opinion about some sort of situation in the world, they reveal their values. Like, we're not getting ready to talk about it, but like if you talk about gun control and all of that stuff, like, what should we do? That person, if they have an opinion, they're going to share that. And even if they don't have opinion, they're actually revealing their values to you. And so I think that this is just a very critical point. And I think, and one thing that Rene said in that episode is that it all has to do with communication. Affection, when you're showing affection, even if you're not verbal, it's still nonverbal communication about how you feel about somebody. And so it's pretty critical. So now we're going to go to, and what's interesting, Rene, is what you just said about reading and growing and being who you are. And I think we both share that. This next segment actually comes from talking about that.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I want to start with why.
Let me start that over though. Dr. J, what is personal investment, and why does that matter to you so much?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I want to start with why it matters, if that's okay. It matters. First of all, it's personal. It's personal. It matters because it's all about the value that I place on myself.
Okay, say more about that.
Right. It's all about the value that I'm able to see, the image bearer that God has created. Right. I'm an image bearer. I am created to look like him, to act like him. The value that I place on myself, and that value that drives my unique contribution to the world. Yeah. That's purpose. That brings purpose to my existence.
Mm-hmm.
That allows me to narrow that becomes a filter, honestly. So if when I'm walking in purpose, because I see my value and I understand the type of contribution that I am created to make to the world, yeah, that allows me to not to narrow out people,
Mm-hmm.
places, situations, that allows me to walk with more of a focus.
Dr. J,
Mm-hmm.
love
Mm-hmm.
love that. I think that what she said about it kind of speaks to your value, the value that you have on yourself. I
Yeah.
thought that was so powerful, Renee. So what made you just very interested in this particular topic and episode? Let's see what. Hi, Jamie. Thank
I
you
think
for
it
sharing.
is so. Yes. Okay.
Jamie says I
Hi,
suffer
Jamie.
from autism, and go ahead, Renee. I want to comment. I want to answer her comment, but go ahead, Renee.
Okay, gotcha. Um, I just think it's so important that we remember to fill our own cups. Um, and I think that we have spoken about the scripture so many times about love thy neighbor as thyself. Um, the love that we have for ourselves to a degree becomes the model for the love that we express to other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
In its simplest forms. When I'm hungry, I'm going to feed myself. When I'm tired, I'm going to rest. When I um, need a moment of peace or solace, I'll go get a massage, or I'll put myself in a quiet place. Or if I need an escape, I'll go read a book. Or if I feel like I need someone to talk to, I'll call a friend, right? um, all of the ways that I take care of myself, I will then extend those to the people that I love and that I care about, or even that I encounter, because everybody's not going to be my friend. Everybody's not going to be someone that I have a personal relationship with, right? If I'm out in the street, God says, what you do for them, you do for me, right? So if I'm out in the street and someone is thirsty or hungry or in need of something, or in need of some sort of care, because I know that whatever it is I feel they need, I would do for myself, I'm going to do that for them as well. So anyway, investing based on that video, investing in yourself, taking that time to um, do that self-discovery is so important, because it helps us to know who in the world we are and who we are presenting to the world, right? Because she's talking about doing that self-discovery to find our purpose. And I believe that she defined the purpose as your unique contribution to the world. I love that she said that, because there are so many people who are trying to find their purpose in what they saw somebody else doing.
Right.
But again, she's bringing it back to, and I agree with the uniqueness of what we have to offer. And so she offers a lot of really practical tips on how to get to that space, just kind of understanding what's important versus what is urgent. And prioritizing your life and your responsibilities accordingly. I just thought the video was really good from a practical standpoint at caring for yourself. And again, at the end of the day, the better you care for yourself, the better headspace you put yourself in, the better space of health that you put yourself in, you're going to be better for everyone that you encounter and have to, deal with and work with. It was just really good. I think Jennifer presented very well in that video.
Yeah, no, that's great. I agree with that. And I believe that she really encapsulated a lot of what I believe my purpose is in this ministry and with this population, is that investing in yourself, loving yourself, living joyfully, regardless of your relationship status. And I think that means that it's not just for the target audience, it's for everyone. Because, as I say, if you don't love your life as a single, marriage is not going to change that. And it's learning that I am really a whole person, and that it's not like two halves coming together. Well, a lot of times it is like two halves coming together, but that's not how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be one whole person coming together, where you are learning to love yourself, fulfill yourself, grow, learn, do new things, bring so much more to your life that brings joy, besides your relationship with God, your relationship with others, your purpose. And I think that she really embodies that. She doesn't just talk about it, but she actually embodies that so well, just in the time that I've gotten to know her, that I just admire that so much.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because actually I did want to speak on that. I also want to say that Jennifer is my cousin, so I'm so proud of that episode. Again, she did a fantastic job. But yeah, the fact that you said that she embodies that, like she wasn't just, shooting from the hip and just talking, about any random thing. It's about something that she lives. So if you were to watch that episode, or, if you were to do, kind of a deep dive in her life, you're going to learn. And watch the episode.
When you watch it.
Oh,
not
when
yet.
you watch. Oh, not yet, but when. Yes, absolutely. But when you watch that episode, you're going to learn in that short period of time. I mean, she's an author, a teacher, a tutor, a traveler, a reader. She's a podcaster. She's a storyteller. A business owner. She is so many things. So when she's giving you this advice, like I've heard somebody say, it's not what I think, is what I know. She's telling you what she is living right now. And that's another thing that I just think just gives her advice so much credibility.
Yeah.
I love it. It's really great. And I'll also add that my cousin Jennifer has a smile that will illuminate this planet. So she's just a ball of just positive energy. And that episode is definitely worth the view. It's really good.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so now we're going to bring the mood down a little bit as we talk about generational trauma.
Your anxiety increases, your blood.
Hold on, let's start that.
No one forced me. I did that. You cannot heal when you keep pointing everything at someone else. Right. Trauma happens. And the same goes if you're going to go into a relationship. You're going to go into a relationship, but you closed your eyes to what you were seeing with this gentleman. You closed your eyes because he cute and he has a nice car. And the relationship is horrible. It's abusive, and you have trauma. Now you want to go to a therapist. You go to the therapist and you're working it through. But when it came to the part where the therapist asked you, what was your role in this? He didn't have to treat me like that. What was your role in this? Nothing. But you were part of the abuse as well, because you didn't tell the other side of the story. Trauma occurs, but in order for us to heal, we must acknowledge our part in the pain. Not all traumas I'm talking about. I'm talking about those traumas where you participated purposefully and intentionally. We have women in the churches who have gone to single men apartments. You didn't expect them, and they got assaulted. You don't know until you know. But you have to acknowledge there's safety issues that come. They're components of the trauma that happens to people. People lose their innocence. Children lose their innocence. You lose that protection. You lose that trust when trauma happens. Okay? You lose that sense of hope. You lose that sense of your body. So many things happen when trauma events happen to someone.
So much happens. And so much that even... Okay, yeah, go ahead.
What's the difference between... Well, I think the answer is in the question. What's the difference between being accountable and blaming yourself?
Right. Being accountable is just saying, look, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Okay. And okay, I acknowledge that. And so I know next time not to do it. But when you're accountable, you know what you did. But when you blame yourself, is that you say I'm accountable, but then you're taking all the responsibility from the other person and putting it on yourself.
Right.
All the responsibility was 2 or 3 in this, whatever it was.
Right.
But
Right.
now you're taking all of theirs and putting it on yourself.
Right.
And so now you're way down. You're way down with this blaming yourself. Your anxiety increases, your blood pressure increases, and you feel that you don't have any control or power. So we need to get out of, when we acknowledge our part, okay, I acknowledge my part, now it's time to get going with the healing.
Get going with the healing. So the thing that was really powerful to me in that the whole episode was amazing, and we just could only show like one clip. We just have to show the whole episode again, but it's on YouTube, so please go watch that. There's actually 2 parts to that, so watch part 1 and 2. But is the accountability piece, because you don't really hear people talk about that when they talk about trauma. And I thought that was really interesting for her to say that in order to heal, you have to acknowledge your part in it. Because I think that it's very easy to say, like she said, well, that person didn't have to treat me that way. That person was wrong. They were wrong. But how did you open the door that allowed that to happen? And acknowledge that without blaming yourself, without saying that I'm taking all responsibility for this situation versus I'm owning my responsibility for this situation. And I thought that was, not only was that a pretty significant statement, it was actually it could be considered kind of controversial. And even it was very bold, in which we know Dr. D is, she don't care, she gonna say what's real, but it was really bold of her to say that, especially as it relates to sexual assault, because there's that fine line of not blaming someone for that, and also saying to acknowledge the reality of going to a single, not even a single man, going to a man's place, you know, there's always risk in that when you don't know that person. So
yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. It's a very fine line. And it also, like, if you are a person who is holding space for someone who has been through some trauma, even if you know that, how do I want to say this? Even if you know that they have some culpability in the situation, it is not always your place. It's not always the time to say, well, you shouldn't have. Or that's not always the right approach. If you're holding space for that person, you hold space for them. And I always ask the Holy Spirit, like, if I'm supposed to say something in this moment, give me what I'm supposed to say. And sometimes just allowing that person to talk it through and being there for them helps them to come around to, like, you know, well, maybe to, like Dee said, like, maybe I shouldn't have been in that situation, or maybe I should have, you know. And so, you know, when we start to say, well, you know, you knew this type of person that he was, or you knew that that's victim shaming. Right. And that's not helpful.
That is not helpful. And the thing that I think is important is that accountability is a lot about recognizing what you did so that you don't do that again.
Right.
It's not about saying, oh, it's your fault that this happened. It's about saying, what could I have done to prevent this from happening? And then how do I then prevent it in the future? Because there are things that happen that you can't prevent, but there are things that happen that you can prevent. And so, like, okay, what decisions do I need to make? And I think that definitely is part of healing, because if you don't do it, then you're going to repeat the cycle that made you do that in the first place. You're going to repeat the cycles in with just a different face or a different situation or different group of friends or a different man or a different woman, and then you're going to be back in the same trauma again or similar trauma. And then like, why is this happening to me? Okay, what decisions are you making that you continue to make? So
yeah.
But it also sounds like, I mean, when you go back and you kind of look at the situation in its totality, what you might discover is that you really didn't do anything wrong. You know, you guys are talking about being accountable, but you might realize you didn't really do anything wrong, but you still are able to take precaution, right? To go over to my friend's house that I did know was not necessarily wrong. I didn't know they were going to do that. But maybe next time, instead of going over to, I mean, because of the example that we're using, over to this man's home, knowing that he was going to be the only one there, then perhaps maybe I'll take a friend, or I'll decide that maybe we should meet out. You know, so again, it's not that you necessarily did anything wrong, but you do want to try to take some sort of precautions to help prevent that, those things from happening again.
Right.
Definitely.
And I think that is like the example that she gave before the clip started, was she was talking about if you were like doing drugs with somebody and with a group of people, and then something happened and, you know, all kinds of trouble came from that. That's obviously something wrong. But I think her example was not that it was a right or wrong thing. It was still a responsibility. Like there's still a choice that we make that can lead to things that we don't have any idea about, you know? And so how can we make different choices, take precautions, do different things because of that? So, so then the next thing was, and it's interesting that we were talking about accountability, because we talked about 7 signs you are not ready for marriage. So here we go. In relationship with other people. So number 1, it means that you are not accountable for your mistakes and for your actions. When you're in a relationship, when you're at a job, when you're anywhere in relationship with other people, and you don't know how to take responsibility for your actions and saying, hey, yeah, I messed up. That was my mistake or my bad. Not in a flippant way, but that like, yeah, that is on me. I'm accountable for that. I messed that up. Yes, I said that and I shouldn't have. Yes, I did that and I shouldn't have. Or I should have done this and I didn't do it. Then if you are not able to do that, if you're not able to take feedback from other people when they say, hey, I didn't like when you did that, or you shouldn't have done that, then that is a problem that you need to work on. And it is going to be very detrimental to a marriage. It is huge in marriage. I mean, you're talking about, this isn't someone you're dating for a couple of months where no conflict might ever come up, or no mistakes or sins against that person might have. We're talking about prayerfully, 10, 20, 30, 50 years of marriage. And if you're always putting the blame on something else or someone else or this situation or that situation, versus recognizing that this is a problem that I have, this is a problem I need to correct, and this is how it's impacting you, then you're not going to have a very effective and happy relationship. Rene, why did you want to talk about this? 7 signs you're not ready for marriage.
Because that's a reality. Everybody who wants it's not ready for it. Everybody who wants it is not willing to put in the work to be ready for it. And this episode throws some considerations out on the table. Because, I mean, truth be told, is anybody really ready? I think there's some people that definitely are, but nonetheless, these are some considerations if that is a desire of yours. I mean, these are 7 things to just that it's a good idea to just take pause and think on these things. When it comes to your personal flaws, do you even know what they are? Do you know what you're about to take into this relationship? And if you do, are you actively working on them? We're not talking about perfecting them. Are you actively working on them, right? If you've been in X number of failed relationships and your exes all say the same thing about, this annoying thing that you do or this bad habit that you have, are you working on that thing? Are you working on, because you talked about your spiritual life. First of all, do you know what you value and not, right? But if a spiritual life is something that you value or that you want from your partner, is that something that you're working on, for yourself? You're building that relationship with God, because that's actually going to help you. And you said it in the episode, it's going to enhance your ability to choose a partner anyway, right? So again, if that's something that you're not doing, you're not readying yourself for what you say you want. Looking at yourself just to see whether or not you're even happy in your singleness, because actually, and I don't think you said this, but if you want a relationship, you're about to merge your life with someone else's. If your life is, trash, or if your life is not pleasant, what you're saying is, I'm going to take this unpleasant life and try to merge it with yours. That's not, who wants that?
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
That's a great point.
Right?
Nobody wants that.
Yeah. Right. You're talking about, you spoke on that.
Go ahead. I was just going to say,
talked about,
people think that marriage makes them happy. And that's such a fundamental lie of just the whole thing, is that marriage doesn't make you happy. We talked about this in the first season, episode, where it's like you feel you get this little, bump in your level of happiness when you get married because of the hype of it. And, you have a partner and you have all these things, but then you go back to the level where you were. It doesn't make you happy. It keeps you where you were. And sometimes it makes you worse. Like, let's be real. So go ahead and what you're about to say.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke about financial, preparedness. Do you have your finances in order? You talked about identifying traumas and triggers and things like that. You talked about being aware of your purpose. And we just kind of talked about that a little bit with Jennifer's thing. what's your unique contribution to the world? Do you have any idea of what that is, whether it's large or small? Because again, everybody's is different, but are you living with some sort of purpose or intentionality for your life? And also, we're talking about whether or not you're happy in your singleness. I mean, do you love yourself? Do you love yourself as a person? And we would hope that the answer is yes, because if you find yourself lovable, then the chances are higher that somebody else is going to find yourself lovable. I would just say that, and we spoke about this in another episode, if you don't find yourself lovable, get to know God and let him reintroduce you to yourself. And I think that would help in that regard. But that's a really good episode, just to take those things into consideration and see, where you feel like you are when it comes to being ready for a relationship.
Amen. All right. Moving on. This was a popular episode talking about Kiki and Darius. And where is that one? That's awesome. There it is. Okay. Here we go.
Navigating in that living.
So real quick on that submission vein, though, because we're talking about, with them not being married, does he, have the right to like kind of impose his thoughts, his morals and standards on her? And in addition to that, what I believe that I heard is that she dismissed him, on that. But if she were married, submission falls into place there as well. When he expresses that, I'm not married, Ebony, I'm assuming that she has a responsibility to take, what he's saying as something that would alter her behavior as well, to some degree, right?
Yeah, if she chooses to, 100%. But that's the shift for me. So they may be living kind of the married life now to a degree, but for a lot of folks, that shift does come when we are actually married. Up until that point, it's like we still have an out. Honestly, we still have an out. But once we have decided that we are going to be married, like that's when the marital part of our relationship begins. And that's when we talk about what rights you have. That's when we talk about what my responsibilities are. That's when it begins for a lot of folks. And so navigating in that living together space, a lot of folks are like, I still have choices. I have there are things that I don't have to adhere to because you're not my husband, you're not my wife. What a lot of folks don't understand is if you have not been growing towards that, it's difficult, near impossible to make that switch because there's no magic time. It's not like when the pastor says, I do, now all of a sudden you are overcome with this desire to be wifely or husbandly. Let me tell you that myth. That's a flat out lie. Okay, 100%. Have been growing towards that. Now you are trying to learn behaviors that you should have been practicing and thinking through prior. Now you're trying to learn them real talk in the crucible.
Yeah.
You can't be just saying yeah to what you already said.
I was like, she dropping some stuff on that one.
Yes, she was.
Ridiculous, man.
It's the truth of it. I mean, I feel like some folks, they play at before they get married, they play at that married space. So they want to do the fun stuff or they want to do the cute stuff, in the relationship that makes them feel bonded and makes them feel, connected. And that's not bad. And if it is your intention to join your life with this person forever, then in that dating space, you should be also doing some of the hard stuff. And some of that hard stuff is talking through, like we said earlier, your values. What are triggers for you? What are deal breakers for you? Like, what does submission look like to one another? And real talk, there are situations and instances when you're dating to marriage where submission is appropriate in that dating space. But if your mindset is you not my this and you not my that, so I don't have to listen, you don't need to be anybody's husband or wife. Period. Because you're going to bring that mentality into your marriage, even if you want to submit. You don't have any practical application of it. You're going to bring it into your marriage. And then, you, like I said, you're trying to work it out in the crucible.
Right. And so the thing that kind of happened in that episode, and I like went away and was thinking about it. And I was just like, yeah. Because Ebony was like, submission is for marriage. And, I was just like, yeah, I mean, I understood that and I get that and I agree with that. And I said, but sex is for marriage too. And we didn't really spend a lot of time on that. I just kind of threw it out there. But then I was just thinking, sex was for marriage before submission was for marriage. Because submission is a result of sin. Doesn't have to be sin done in a sinful way, obviously. And so to me, we've become, even in the Christian world, we've become so comfortable with people just having sex with whomever before they get married that we kind of separated those things, because submission and sex are only for marriage. And so we're like, okay, well, they can have sex and that's just whatever it is. We accept that. And then we say, but then they don't have to do this other part. And I believe that from a quote, like from a godly perspective, submission is for the person that you're having sex with. And that's why God said, don't have sex with people that you ain't married to. Because there's a bonding that is actually happening with sex. And because sex is submission, mutual submission. There's a stripping, literally, figuratively.
Right.
That comes with that. That even after, like when Adam and Eve sinned, before they were naked and were not ashamed, after they were sinned, they were naked and they were ashamed and they were hiding. And so when you say, and God's intention, when you actually reveal yourself, mind, heart, body, soul to someone, and they do that to you, submission becomes a natural outgrowth of that. And so that's why I'm like, I agree with the theological perspective that submission is for marriage, but we need to get back to the place where sex is for marriage, and that the church doesn't hide from that. But it also, I mean, we're not here to condemn anybody. That's not the point. But even in the church, let's be real, sex is not for marriage anymore. The mindset, yeah, maybe on the larger scale, but like on the ground level, Christians of all, nations, kindred, tongue, and people, denominations, and all that, are comfortable with the idea that it's okay to have sex before you get married. But submission, but finances, but this, but that. Oh no, what you talking about? I'm not ready to tell you my bank account. Are you kidding me? But I'm gonna then show you my goodies. So that to me is that's what gets me fired up about what we are teaching our young men and our young women about themselves, their value, the value of sex, the purpose of sex, and all that comes with that covenantal relationship.
That's a whole nother episode, sis, for real. Because
agree.
In my opinion, a part of the reason why we are so loose with it now is because we were so restricted with it. We have never in the church had healthy conversations about sex and sexuality. It was like, it's the devil's handiwork. Don't do it.
Right.
Real talk. Even when you got married, how many women saved themselves? How many men saved themselves until they got married, and then got married and didn't know what for? Had no idea, and then had to be deprogrammed from the trauma that was imposed upon them by demonizing sex. So we have never had healthy conversations in the church about it. So it would lend itself to the fact that, particularly as the generations become more expressive and more expansive, that they'd be like, we're just gonna do whatever, because there's been no healthy discourse about it ever in the church.
Right. No, agree. All right. So we're going to talk about that. We actually are going to talk about that next season. Final one. Here we go. To those who wait for him. And then the verse we started with that I used to doubt, now embrace with peace. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. And then the next verse says, it is good that one should hope and wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. Use the waiting season to saturate your mind with his faithfulness, to learn his character, and to strengthen your hope in him, not just what he can do. and then share your testimony for those coming behind who are being worn down by their weight. This is why I did this today, because can I tell you something? I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting. The thing hasn't happened yet. The business is still struggling and trying to figure out. So a lot of times we hear people's testimonies after they're on the mountaintop now, and they're like, and God blessed, and God, and it's like, no, I'm still waiting. But now I'm waiting differently because I have peace in who I know he is. I have peace in what he's already done. I have peace in just the signs that he's given me over this time. Rene, you wanted to talk about this, and I do have something to share about that. So go for it, Rene.
That was a hard episode. That was a hard episode. And I'm going to tell you what the first thing that came to my mind as I was listening. For those who ever find themselves feeling some kind of way about their faith not being exactly where they want it to be at all times, the thought that came to me from hearing your testimony is that sometimes we have a wavering faith with an unwavering God. Cliche. You can't have the testimony without the test. And girl, the tests that have come, especially when you feel like you are listening to God and obeying God, and you have expectations of what is going to come next after you feel like you've done the right thing. And then what you end up really facing is a disappointment after another disappointment after another disappointment. The disappointment means that it doesn't look like what you wanted it to look like. Right? So I love how at the end you said, I'm still waiting. You're dead smack in it right now. And I love the testimony because it's real, it's raw, it's ugly. And I feel like there are people who need to hear that, to have that in front of their face, because I feel like with you speaking to God's faithfulness in it, I feel like it would help someone else as they are going through their struggles as well. One of the things that I love that you said too is that it's good to get with people that allow you to feel what you feel. Like when your faith is weak and you are, not in the best space, go ahead on and get with somebody who will allow you to talk and express whatever it is you feel. But at the same time, they don't let you stay there. They recognize that it is what it is. You feel what you feel, and it's healthy for you to go through that, throughout the whole experience. Because at the end of the day, you're talking about, that mountaintop experience. It's going to be so much sweeter because of all of these, what's going through my mind. I'm seeing, what's her name? I love Lucy squashing the grapes. You know what I mean? The wine is going to be so much sweeter because of the pressing, the crushing, this, because of the process that you went through. So I personally, I love that episode. And I do feel like there's an audience for it. There's people who need to hear that, to know that God can still be praised in the midst of those moments where you're not quite sure where you're going with this, but the good thing about it too is that even in the midst of those valleys, you still had those hills where you're just like, okay, God, I see you. Okay, God, I see you. But help me to keep my faith consistent while we're doing all of these things. So anyway, it was a great episode. I really, I liked it. But again, because I know, well, probably just human to human, but also because I know you personally, and I know, a little bit more, about the story, I felt like it was a little bit difficult, to watch. But again, we've all had those times in life where it was easy and then it was not. And we made our way through it. We can look back at all of those pieces, the ups, the downs, the moments where we thought that we were going to absolutely lose our mind. And we can see how they all played, how they all weave into what God was doing. When we finally see that big picture.
Yeah. Ebony, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say.
Yeah, it's the waiting knows it is no respecter of persons. So your life, if you're living, you're gonna wait. I mean, there's gonna be something in your life where you can be like, man, I wish this would happen now, or I wish this would stop, or I wish, and it's not. It's the nature of humanity, and so learning how to wait well is critical to our well-being, to our spiritual well-being, our emotional well-being, our mental health. Like all of waiting well is a skill. It's a skill, and it's a skill that has to be cultivated. And I was thinking about when you were talking, I was thinking about the song from the Fireproof soundtrack. While I'm waiting. Worship while I'm waiting. Because when you're waiting and it feels like poor grandma intended, this not never gonna happen. That worship can get you through times when you like, this ain't it, and it ain't worth it, So yeah.
The song that comes to mind for me with that one is Torrin Wells, God of the Hills and Valleys.
Yes, girl. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue to what the Holy Spirit kind of impressed me with, and we're going to try to wrap up shortly. This is the last one we're going to talk about. But I actually heard that song yesterday on the radio, and I hadn't heard it in a while, but and I was thinking about that thing, and the Holy Spirit brought this to me, and I was just like, man, I'm gonna have to preach a sermon on that. But I was just like, when you're in the valley, like literally in a valley, that's actually the surest, most sound foundation that you walk on. Because you're on the ground. You don't think about where you're stepping. You don't think about, like, I got to grab this ledge. You don't think about, but when you're in the mountain, there's all of these different heights, and so you're actually a little bit more unsteady. The point that the Holy Spirit brought to me, I was just like, oh, that's actually true. And it tied in with the fact that I heard about someone this week who was hiking in the mountains, and the ledge that they were holding on broke, and they fell to their death. And so all of that tied, and I was just like, mountain, valley, and it was just like, okay, when you're in the physical valley, you're not trying to pay attention. Like, it's just like walking on the sidewalk. You're not asking God to watch it. But like in a spiritual valley, it can be the most sure place that you stand, because you can't do anything else. Like, there is no other option when you're in the valley. When we're on the mountain and everything's going good, it can be, oh, is that God? Or I'm going to do this myself. I don't need God for this. And so it actually, what is it? The pride goes before the fall. When we're in the mountain, and I'm not saying, you don't ever want to be, God will take you to the mountain, but like the surest place that you stand is actually in the valley, because that's when I got nothing. I got nothing. There is nothing I can do to get out of this valley. And so all I have, which is all that I really need, is God's word. I'm gonna stand on God's word, because when these past months, this year, I have had nothing. There was like literally nothing I could do that was legal. But yes, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so all I had once I came out of that was God. And it's just like when we're in the mountain and we start to depend on ourselves, and it's like, oh, I got money, I got this, I got a good career, I got a good business, I have a good marriage. Then we start to actually, it's easier for us to lose our footing because we don't necessarily have to depend on God. And so I was just like, oh God, that's awesome. So maybe let's stop trying to get out of the valley. Let's just stand on his word. And then wherever he takes us, then we are so secure in that when we get to the mountain, because I believe that there's mountains in our life as well as valley, then it's almost like we don't even realize it because we're just standing on him. You know how the enemy took Jesus up to the mountain? Now we want God to take us up to the mountain, but the enemy can take us there too. And so I was just like, that was crazy to think of the valley in a different way than how we typically say.
Yeah, that takes some noodling on, but I can totally see that. I mean, there's so much imagery that comes to my mind, and that I need to take a little note on that one.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because there's so much imagery that comes to my mind as well. And one of the things is when you're talking about you're standing on like solid ground, you don't have to worry about like walking off, like stepping off of the edge or whatever. What the image that's going through my mind is the fact that you can close your eyes, spread your arms, and you can worship and dance, and you know what I mean, without worrying about whether or not I'm going to fall.
Yeah. So stand on that. Stand on that. In the valley, all you got is him. So when you learn how to stand on him in the valley, you'll know how to stand on him on the mountaintop. So
amen.
Proverbs 4:7, it says, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And in all you're getting, get understanding. And we have really been trying to do that to provide that for this whole season and last season. It's called Live, Love, and Marry Wiser. We're going to dig deeper in the next season, even about the wisdom. But wisdom is the principal thing. Get wisdom. But in all you're getting, get understanding. And then apply it to your lives. We want you to live, love, and marry wiser. We want you to have a life that is full of, and in the Proverbs, wisdom is actually representative of Christ. So we want you to live fully in that wisdom. We are so grateful for all of you who have watched this season. Susan gets a special shout out because she has been consistent with us. She's a super fan. Gail, who I met at camp, and she was just like, hey, I recognize you. I don't know if I told y'all this. I told you all this, but the audience. And I was just like, what? Where do you? And she's like, don't you have a show? I was just like, it's like my first YouTube thing. Gail, if you're watching, thank you. I appreciate you so much and hope to get with you soon. Vanessa and all of those, my co-hosts, Rene and Ebony, my producer, HDA, and all of those who have watched. Oh, let me shout out Anita, because she's always sharing it and watching it on Facebook and sharing everything that I post. Thank you all. We are so grateful for you. And this is the season finale. We're going to take a month off. We will be back on September 19th with new episodes, new guests. We are so excited. We talked to a guest yesterday who's going to be on actually that first episode. And so we're excited. If there's things that you want us to talk about, guests that you want us to have, please share that in the comments. If you do that, I will send you that free ebook, and I will look forward to talking with you again live. I will be posting at 6:15 on Tuesdays a recorded video for the next month. But then we'll be back on September 19th with the whole gang. So if at the end of all of this, thank you again, Rene. Thank you, Ebony. I really appreciate your wisdom and all that I've learned from you all. And until next time, we want to make choices that will help us live, love, and marry wiser. God bless you, and we will see you September 19th.